Okay, so beginning on our backs with our heads resting on a blanket and rolling up that blanket so it's tucked underneath the neck. Just gonna come right down, finding a position that's comfortable for you. Just letting the arms fall off to the side, letting the feet rest flat on the ground, and closing the eyes softly. Begin to deepen the breath, breathing in through the nose and exhaling through the nose or the mouth, whatever's feeling more comfortable for you today. Try to smooth out the forehead, relax the jaw, release tension away from the shoulders, letting the backs of the shoulders melt into the ground below you and the arms heavy. Begin to lengthen the exhale, trying to tap into that rest and digest part of our nervous system, allowing our heart rates to slow, allowing the nervous system to be calm and feeling safe in this space that you're creating. Now, taking the fingers and walking them up behind the angle of the jaw, and just begin to kind of hook your finger underneath the jaw. You could do one side first and then the other. You can also use your thumbs to hook underneath the jaw on either side. So you might feel little areas of pressure points, and you can gently push and hold on those pressure points until it starts to subside a little bit. And then move along the jawbone, once again hooking the thumb underneath that jawbone until you find another tender spot, and push and hold until that tender spot starts to resolve a little bit. So right now I'm walking my thumb around the corner of the jawbone and working my way down to the chin. And then once you feel like that is pretty loosened up, you can do the same thing on the other side. So taking the thumb and hooking it underneath the angle of the jaw, finding little pressure points. We don't get to do this very often. We don't think that this is a technique that we can use on ourselves. And working your way down toward the chin. And then taking both index and middle fingers, you're going to find the space in front of the entrance to the ear where the jaw joint resides. So if you place your fingers just in front of the ear and open and close your mouth, you'll feel that little knob poke out into the fingertips. And then close the jaw, and you can just massage in a circular motion around that jaw area. And you can move the fingers around that area just to see where you're feeling some tension. And then if you really find a nice spot of tension, you can actually push and hold gently, just enough so that the tips of the fingers turn white. So we don't want to push so hard that they completely lose color. And just breathe, let go. All right, now taking both pointer fingers and the thumb, if you place the pointer fingers and thumb kind of in this pinching motion in between the teeth, and you can actually pull your jaw open slightly just to give it a stretch. So we're going to inhale, press the jaw open, and breathe on your own for about 5 breaths here. Really stretching out that jaw, releasing any tension, finding the breath. I know this can be a little strange feeling, but it's oh so good. Maybe you can push open a little more. And then release the hands to the floor, taking a moment to make any adjustments in the shoulder, letting go of tension. And then focusing on the back of our neck. So getting into the deep neck flexors, those are little tiny muscles at the base of our skull that are about an inch long, and they actually keep our head on top of our body. So they have to work really hard when we're at our computers or on our cell phones. So to counter that, we're strengthening those. And the exercise is doing a cervical retraction. So you're trying to push the back of your neck down into the blanket and then release. And that's you're going to kind of feel like you're making a double chin. You're kind of pushing the head straight back and then release. Let's take that up to 10 times. And if you're doing this correctly, you'll really feel it in the back of the neck. Now, if you notice that you're getting a lot of recruitment from the shoulders, that means that you're trying to push too hard. So if that's happening, back off about 50%. Press and hold and release. And let's take a couple more. Should be feeling that by now. Excellent job. Okay, rolling over with intention, with ease onto one side, and gently pressing yourself up to a seated position. We're just going to go through a series of neck stretches here just to warm up all of those muscles before we get into some movement. So if you want to sit up on a blanket or a block, just to align the spine, you can sit cross-legged or feet out in front of you, whatever is comfortable. Taking a moment to sit up nice and tall, softening those shoulders, and then draw the chin down to the chest to lengthen the back of the neck. Place the fingers behind the head, allowing gravity to take the head down into a flexed position. Releasing with every exhale. And then letting go, lifting up through the chest, up through the sternum until finally that chin raises up toward the ceiling. Really feeling that stretch throughout the front of the neck. Keeping the gaze upward, you can rock your head from side to side. You may feel some different muscles working, stretching here. And then find your center and lower the head down into a neutral position. Taking the left ear to left shoulder, reaching the hand up and over, allowing the weight of gravity in the hand to pull that ear down toward the shoulder. Right hand reaches down and away from you to create length in the side of the neck. If you walk your fingertips toward the back of the head, you can use that hand to guide your head down. So almost like you're looking down toward your left knee. Deepen the breath. And then release, coming back up to center, taking that right ear to right shoulder. And bringing that right arm up and over, deepening the stretch, reaching the left fingertips out to the side of your mat. Really exploring that stretch in the side of your neck, breathing into that space. If you walk your fingertips toward the back of the head, turn the head to gaze down at your right knee. And breathe deeply. And then release to come back through center. Fingertips to the floor. You're going to walk the fingertips back behind you and lift the chest up, up, up toward the ceiling, really pushing the floor away from you to reset the spine. Great job. Release the hands to side. Take the gaze over the left shoulder, over the right shoulder, just alternating between right and left here, moving with ease and intention, exploring these ranges of motion. And then find your center, rooting the left hand down to the ground, reach the right arm up and over. Almost like you're rainbowing that arm over your body. Press the floor away from you to expand that rib cage and breathe deeply into those ribs. Turn the shoulders so that you're facing down to the floor and walk your fingertips around through center. Walk your fingertips over to the right side of your mat. Root that right hand down and reach the left arm up and over for a side body stretch. Really pushing the floor away from you, expanding throughout the left ribs as you deepen your breath into that space. And then turning that shoulder so that your gaze is down to the floor. Walk the fingertips back through center. And then finally in as you roll up, up, up. Head is the last thing that comes up. Resting the hands on the knees for a moment, closing the eyes, feeling that energy that you've just created in your body, and setting an intention for the rest of your practice. And when you're ready, you can softly open the eyes and work your way into a tabletop position, stacking your shoulders over the wrists, the hips over the knees. You can use that blanket for your knees or move it off to the side. And just taking a couple of cat-cows, lengthening the belly, dropping the chest down, and taking the gaze upward. Exhale, round the spine, draw that belly button up and in, and then take the gaze down toward the knees. Flowing between cat and cow here, seeing if you can maybe activate a different part of the spine. So if your rounding usually occurs in the upper back, can you try to get it to occur more in the lower back? So you'll notice that engages some more of your abdominal muscles in a different way. Take a couple more here, moving your own breath to movement. And then sending hips back to the heels, walking the hand up halfway. Taking the right arm behind the head, we'll twist to tap that elbow to the forearm, and then lift and look up underneath the elbow. Let's twist to tap and lift and look up. Taking this 5 times total, moving intentionally. Excellent job. Release the hand to the floor, floating the left hand up behind the head. We'll twist to tap the other side and lift and look up underneath. Really getting into that rotation of the mid-back. And 5, release the hand to the floor. Coming back up into our tabletop, rooting your weight into the left hand. We'll inhale, float the right hand up, and then exhale to thread that arm through, taking the head down toward the floor, or you can prop it up on a blanket or a block. Stacking the hips over the knees and aligning both hips with each other. Gently press the right hand into the floor below you. Find your breath, breathing into the middle lobes of the lungs. So that's located right along the heart space, right in the mid-back. And on your next exhale, press into the left hand, unwinding from that twist and lifting that right hand up toward the ceiling before you lower it back down to the ground. Other side, rooting down into the right hand. Inhale, float the left hand up. Exhale, threading it through, taking the ear down to your mat, your block, or a blanket. Aligning the knees, stacking the hips over the knees. And then pressing the back of the arm into the floor below you. Breathing into the heart space here. And then releasing your twist. Inhale, float that arm up and then take it to the floor. Rolling it up into a tall kneeling position. Spiral both of your palms to face forward. We're going to reach the fingertips back for our camel pose and lift that chest up. If you feel like you want to grab one heel and then the other, the key here though is to really lift up through the chest. That might feel nice throughout the quad muscles too. Or if you want to take your hands to the blocks like we have done, that's also a great option. Whatever your body needs today. Couple more breaths here. Using those core muscles to lift you up and out of the pose, we're going to lace the fingers together. Gently press the palms to the floor. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, releasing the hands down by your side. Lacing fingers together, again, pressing to the floor. Inhale, lift up, and then release. Let's take that a couple of more times here, but this time we want to keep that retraction that we were doing against the blanket when we were laying down. So as you come up overhead, can you draw the chin in slightly, stacking the ear over the shoulder? And let's try that one more time. As we come up to the top, we'll exhale to take a twist to the right. And then inhale, reaching back up through center, taking your twist to the left. And then back up through center. Let's take the hands to heart center for a moment. Really looping those shoulders down and back, chest proud. Taking 3 to 5 breaths here. Recentering. Coming back down onto those hands, let's take the knees out nice and wide. Send the hips back onto the heels. And if you wish, you can take your forehead down to a blanket or onto your yoga mat. But we're going to walk the fingertips up overhead and take a moment here in extended child's pose just to release, let go. So in this pose, this is a nice opportunity to really relax, really let go. So if you can open up that jaw and wiggle the lower jawbone from side to side. You might get some popping, clicking, grinding. If it's very painful, just back off of that intensity and move gently. A couple more breaths here. And then one big stretch, opening the jaw, maybe sticking the tongue out as long as it will go for lion's breath. And then letting the tongue come back in the mouth, closing the jaw. Coming up onto those fingertips, lifting the forehead off of your blanket or the mat. Walk the fingertips off to the side of your mat, really rooting the left hip to the ground. Creating this space throughout the left side body, throughout the rib cage, the shoulder complex. And then exploring the motion of looking up and underneath the arm. Breathe deeply into the rib space. And then releasing the twist, taking the gaze down to the floor. Let's walk through center and off to the other side. Really rooting that right hip to the ground, lengthening throughout the side body, and taking the gaze up and underneath the arm. Breathing deeply, intentionally. And then releasing that twist, taking the gaze to the floor. Let's walk the fingertips back through center. Keeling yourself up, back into tabletop here. Getting those knees back under the hips and moving your blanket off to the side if you were using one. And let's find our first downward facing dog of the day. So tuck those toes, send the hips up and back. Pretty generous bend in the knees for this first one unless you're pretty warmed up. And you can pedal the heels out, alternating right and left. But try to soften the shoulders away from your ears. So pretend as though you're sliding your shoulder blades down into your back pockets. And then find a moment of stillness here, sinking both heels to the ground, lengthening through the back of the legs. And looking up between the hands, let's shift the shoulders over the wrist for plank pose, just getting some weight bearing in those arms, really pushing the floor away from you. And then begin to walk the the toes up to the hands. And then inhale, come up into your flat back, looping the shoulders down and back. Long line from the crown of the head to the tailbone. Soft bend in the knees as you send the hips back, sweeping the arms forward, coming up into our chair pose, sending the arms up overhead. Imagine holding onto a big beach ball overhead. Try to drop the shoulders down and away from the ears for chair pose. Take your hands to heart center and let's take a chair twist, bringing one elbow to the outside of the opposite knee. Aligning both knees with each other and trying to get the hands in front of your sternum. Nice flat back here. And then releasing the twist, coming back through center. Let's take the other side. Finding your twist. Aligning both knees. And then release to come back through center. Inhale, coming up to our tall mountain, lacing both fingers together, both index fingers point up to the ceiling. Exhale, little back bend here, and then inhale to lift back up. Exhale, cactusing both arms, drawing the elbows down toward the hips, lifting the chest up, and then release back overhead. Taking that 2 more times. Inhale, drop down and lift the chest up. Exhale, release. 1 more. And then lacing opposite hand. Little back bend here once again, and then inhale to come up, taking the hands to heart center. Another chair pose twisting variation, sending the hips down and back. Weight is in the heels, knees are behind the toes. Really squeezing the knees together, squeezing those glutes, taking a twist here, hooking the elbow to the knee, finding that alignment of the sternum right behind your hands. Once you have that, you can stay here, or you can begin to open up the hands so that the upper hand comes up to the ceiling, lower hand extends down toward the foot. Deepening that twist. If this is cranky in the low back, come back to that first position. Find a deep breath here. And on your exhale, take the hands back to heart center, working your way back through the middle and taking the other side, hooking the elbow to the knee, finding the sternum in front of the hands. Draw that left knee in line with the right. Releasing one hand down and the other hand up. Enjoying that twist as you deepen into this chair twist. Exhale, release the hands back to center. Inhale, come up to stand. And then exhale, sweeping the hands down by your side. Excuse me. Aligning both feet together so that the balls of the big toes are touching if they aren't already. Spiral both palms to face forward as you loop the shoulders down and back, stacking the ears over the shoulders, shoulders over the hips. Closing the eyes softly if that feels comfortable. Finding your center and your balance. Taking your hands to heart center, we'll shift the weight onto your right leg, finding our tree pose. So the sole of the foot can either come to the shin or the inner thigh, wherever that feels good today. Lift up and out of that hip and try to grow those branches tall and wide. As you reach the arms up, try to soften the shoulders away from the ears. Find your focal point, that drishti. It's going to keep you stable. And then taking the hands to heart center, you're spiraling that knee to face forward and releasing the foot to hover off of the floor. Go ahead and lace your fingers and catch your knee with both hands. So here, I'm not letting my knee pull me down. I'm actually keeping those shoulders plugged in. Half staff pose here. And then exhale, sweep that leg back, hinging at the hips and reaching the arms overhead. For warrior 3, try to keep both hips squared to the floor. And then exhale, releasing, unhinging, taking the foot to the floor. Nice job. Other side. Taking our tree pose, shifting the weight onto the left leg. Taking the sole of the foot to the shin or the inner thigh. Lifting up and out of that hip, hands to heart center. As you find that drishti, your focal point, you're going to reach the arms up and out for our tree pose. Try to soften the shoulders away from the ears. And breathe. Taking the hands back to your heart, rotate that knee to face forward and hover the foot off of the floor. Go ahead and catch your knee with laced fingers and grow tall, plugging in the shoulders, lifting the chest up. Hinging at the hips and extending that leg long behind you. Try to get both hip points to face the floor and sweep the arms overhead. Getting that balance. If you come out of it, it's okay. And then exhale, release the hands and the feet downward. Hands to heart center here, finding a moment of stillness, finding a moment to breathe. Grabbing a yoga block if it's nearby. Inhale to sweep both arms up overhead. Exhale, hinge forward at the hips, swan diving, taking hands to shins. Inhale, sliding those hands up the shins, flat back. Inhale deeply. As you exhale, bend the knees, take the hands to the floor, and step your right foot back into a runner's lunge here. Feet are on railroad tracks. Taking your block down to the floor so that it's inside the arch of the foot. Place your right hand on that block and inhale to float the left hand up behind the head. Or excuse me, up toward the ceiling. Spiral your palm backward and bend your elbow so that you can find the hip crease on the other side. Loop that shoulder down and back so that you can expand across the chest. Head is neutral. And then release the arm overhead. And then release the twist, sending both hands to the floor, moving your block off the side. Lowering that knee down to the floor and untucking the toe. Sweep the arms up overhead. Exhale, releasing the hands behind the hips, lacing the fingers together and gently pressing the fingertips down toward the floor. So you're going to squeeze your shoulder blades together to open up across the chest. If it feels good, you can hinge forward at the hips, sending those fingers up, up, up. If not, that first position might be enough. Release both hands to the floor. We're going to tuck that back toe and hover the knee. Stepping that left foot back, finding your high plank, and then sending the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Really dropping into those heels this time. Diving the chest down toward the floor. Take the gaze up between the hands. Right foot comes up between the hands. You might need to take a couple of steps to get there. Okay, so when you arrive, try to get both feet on railroad tracks so that we can get your center of gravity here. Sink the hips down to open up throughout that thigh. Take the gaze forward for a moment and breathe. Taking your block and placing it inside the arch of the foot. Root the left hand into the block. Inhale, float the right arm up. Spiral the palm backward and bend that elbow, taking the hand to the opposite hip crease. Really loop the shoulder down and back to peel that chest open. Keeping the head aligned in a neutral position so we're not turning too much or side bending. And then release the twist, taking both hands to the floor, moving your block off the mat. Lower your knee down to the ground, untuck the toe, and sweep both hands up overhead. On your exhale, release both hands down by your side, taking the opposite grip behind the hips this time. So finding that funny feeling grip. Really press those fingertips down toward the floor, opening up across the chest. This might be your limit, and you need to honor your body where it is today. If you want to get into this a little deeper, you can hinge at the hips and send those fingertips upward. Releasing the hands down to the floor, stepping that right foot back behind you and coming down into a saddle seated position. Turning around to extend the legs out long. Excellent job. So we didn't spend a lot of time working hamstrings in this sequence leading up to this. So if you need a blanket or a couple of blocks behind the knees, bending the knees is kinder on the hamstrings. So we'll inhale to grow tall through the crown of the head. And then exhale to hinge forward at the hips, keeping your chest lifted and gaze forward. Taking a couple of moments to breathe here. So if you can grab onto the toes, feel free to do so and gently pull them up toward the shins. Important to keep the shoulders plugged into their sockets. So we're not hanging out, rounding the spine, but rather lifting the chest and head and plugging in. And then release everything, walking the fingers and hands up to a seated position. You can move your blocks or blanket off to the side. And let's take the sole of the left foot into the thigh, angling that right leg out to the outer edge of your mat. Left hand reaches up overhead and then dives forward. If you can catch the outer blade of your right foot, feel free, or the outer shin, whatever feels good. The point here, though, is to find an anchor point with the hand and then root the left hip to the ground, maybe exploring how that feels in the low back, maybe throughout the shoulder. If you are grabbing onto your foot, this is kind of interesting. If you kind of gas pedal your foot into your hand, you might feel a new sensation throughout shoulder blade or the left side of the back. Couple moments to breathe here, finding this balance between effort and ease, and noticing where in the body you're needing an additional stretch. Send the breath there. Release the hand and coming back up to center. Let's exchange the legs out. So taking the sole of the right foot into the thigh. Left leg goes out to the side of your yoga mat. Reach the right arm up high to the sky and then take a side bending motion, catching the outer edge of the shin or the foot. Root your right hip into the ground. And if you want that little extra edge, you can push gas pedaling your foot into your hand. Lengthening throughout the right side body, breathing into those spaces. Excellent job. You can release and walk yourself back up to center here. Let's bend both knees, extend one leg out long. Let's extend the right leg out long so we don't get confused here. And then we'll hug your left knee in to the chest, crisscrossing that foot over the knee. Kickstand your left hand back behind you, reach the right arm up, 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 and then twist, hooking the elbow to the outside of the knee, finding a spinal twist deepening to the left. And breathe. Release the twist by reaching up to the ceiling and unwinding. Taking the hand down to the floor, extending the left leg out long, other side. Hug your right knee into the chest for a moment to realign the spine. Crisscross your foot over the knee. Kickstanding that right hand back behind you and reaching the left hand up to the ceiling. Twisting to hook that elbow to the outer knee. Deepen the twist. Every time you inhale, you're expanding the rib cage all the way around. And as you exhale, you can access new ranges. Reaching that hand up, go ahead and unwind from your twist. Extending both legs out long for a moment and bouncing the knees up and down just to release any tension. Bending both knees, feet flat on the floor. Scoot your bottom down toward your heels. Grabbing onto the backs of the thighs. We're looping shoulders down and back, growing tall through the crown of the head. Reaching both hands forward, begin to lower down, keeping that length in the spine. Feeling that activation in the core all the way down. Keep holding all the way down to the floor with control. And once you get there, you can just let go and release. Taking a deep cleansing breath and exhaling to melt into the floor. Inhale, reach the arms up overhead for a total body stretch, reaching from fingertips all the way to the toes. And then release both hands to the floor, palms down, bend both knees. Pressing into the hands, send the hips up toward the ceiling for bridge pose, lacing both fingers underneath the hips and walking the shoulder blades together to open up across the chest. Deep breath here. Release the fingers and lower down one spinal segment at a time. Extend both legs out long. Walk both thumbs underneath your seat to give you a little anchor point here. Okay. Take a moment. Hug both elbows into the body. Bending your elbows, lifting the chest up toward the ceiling for half fish pose. The head can drop backward if that feels good on the neck, but otherwise you can keep the gaze up or forward. And breathe. And on your exhale, you can straighten the elbows, lowering the upper body down to the floor. Hug both knees into the chest. Nice big hug, taking the forehead to the knees. Squeezing, squeezing, squeezing as hard as you can. And then exhale, releasing. Feet to floor, arms come out into a T position. Heel toe your feet to the outer edges of your yoga mat and just begin to rock the knees from side to side. And then finding some stillness, heel toeing the feet back together, all the way together so that the knees and feet are touching. Lower your knees off to the right side of your mat for a gentle twist and take your gaze down your left arm. And then come back through center, taking the knees off to the other side, stacking one on top of the other. And the gaze goes down the right arm. Breathe deeply, letting go with every exhale. And then back through center. And feel free to take any other pose that you feel like your body might need at this time. Grabbing a block or blanket, bolster, maybe socks for your Shavasana. And when you're ready, you can let the arms fall out to the side, palms face up to the ceiling. Extending right leg and left leg out. Allowing the toes to fall open, releasing tension from the hips. Dropping those shoulders away from your ears and letting the backs of the shoulders melt into the ground below you. Feeling all of the points of contact between your body and the surface beneath. Tucking the chin slightly to experience that lengthening in the back of the neck. Feel the openness throughout the chest that you just created. Feel that ability to give and receive love with an open heart. Begin to deepen your breath, making room with every inhale, letting go with every exhale.
Your hands on the heart. Inhale and exhale as you bend your knees. Shifting over onto one side. Using your hand to prop you up into a seated position. Eyes closed. Sit bones down to the ground, hands to the knees. Taking a moment to acknowledge the presence of the breath. Thank you. Your hands to heart center, chin into the chest. May you carry this